what were those conversations around values like, and how have those manifested in the life and business of your clients and in the way that you've continued to do your work?
Well, I think it's probably fair and helpful to give perspective on where the values came into play as far as my business is concerned. Sure. So transparency, it was a conversation with my therapist. I was experiencing a lot of different shifts, and it was just a question that she had asked me. She was like, what are your values? Like, what do you value? And that was the question. And I was able to rattle them off pretty quickly at the time. And then it became this thing of, okay, if these are the things that I value, I need to make sure that I'm actually honoring it so that I don't end up in this similar position where I'm like questioning everything in my life. And so I started doing that, just kind of checking in with myself periodically. At first it was a few times a week, then a few times a month. And, now it's just kind of ingrained of, all right, well, these are the values. And what have I done in the last day, week, couple of weeks that are in alignment with those values? And I started to notice shifts in my behavior and in my own decision-making and how I was showing up for myself first and then for other people. And then I started incorporating it with clients, and they started sharing with me like, oh, this is really helpful. And it's a matter of like, all right, here are my values. Here's why they're important to me. Here's how I define them. Here is the commitments that I'm making to my community through the lens of the values, including how I'm going to be inclusive through the lens of those values. And the feedback from people was very like, this is incredibly helpful.
Let's stick with inclusivity as a value. What did that look like for you as a person and as a person in the world and as a person who was running a business? Like, how do you know that you were being inclusive? I guess before that, how did you define inclusivity? And then like, how did you know that you were being inclusive?
Well, for me, being inclusive is about making sure that people feel seen, heard, and understood. So I look at it in a few different ways. Diversity, it gives people a seat at the table. It's a start. Representation gives them a voice, and it, allows them to be heard. But true inclusion or inclusivity is where they not only feel welcome, seen, heard, and understood. Like it's that, like they feel seen, welcome, heard, understood, all of those things. It's all encompassing. And it's done in a way that people feel like they can be their whole selves in their whole humanity, all of their identity. They can show up as they are and be honored in that in a way that isn't judgmental. It's more a thing of, if you're asking questions about them and their experience or what they need, it comes from this space of curiosity and wanting to connect rather than wanting to tell them what you think and how they should be instead.
Yeah. So what did that look like for you as a person and as a small business owner?
I love this question. So for me, it required me to get really honest about who I am and what I believe and the things that I had been kind of harboring for myself and maybe just my immediate circle of like, this is stuff that I just don't want to share with the world, even particularly around sexuality. People that were close to me were aware, but it wasn't something that I was open about. So starting there was a big thing for me. And then just living in that truth and that honesty of my own humanity and lived experience and modeling it for people and creating a space where it's like, okay, some of these things in depending on where you are and what part of the country you're in can be really brave and vulnerable to share, and setting that example of being brave enough and vulnerable enough to be all of who I was allowed people to access their own internal safety, to be honest. I've worked with clients, actually one I was just speaking with not too long ago, who shared things with me during our work together that they had come to realize about themselves and they were so afraid to, but they felt safe enough to share it with me first. And having that level of trust where I was able to work with them and get them grounded in themselves so that they could be who they were in the world and begin to build their own business around that and feel really good about it. That's like, I think that that's so powerful, because the more, from my perspective, the more people are able to be who they are without fear of judgment, or even if they are being judged, I think that it just creates more opportunities for people to feel aligned and have a sense of peace in their lives, because there's less anxiety about what might come at them